There's a test that takes less than 10 seconds. No equipment, no appointment, no waiting room. Just you, the floor, and about 10 feet of open space. Sit down on the floor. Now stand back up, without using your hands, without a chair, without rolling to your side and pushing off the ground. If you just did that without thinking twice, you're already ahead of a large share of men your age. If you couldn't, or you're not sure you'd want to try it in front of anyone, stay with me because this is worth 10 minutes of your time. Here's why this one small movement gets so much attention. Picture two men, same age, standing next to each other at a family barbecue. A kid drops a toy under the picnic table. One man drops down, grabs it, and stands back up mid-conversation without breaking stride. The other man has to think about it first, weighs whether it's worth the effort, maybe waves someone else over instead. Neither man says a word about it, but that split-second hesitation is data, and it's the exact thing this test is designed to surface on purpose in a controlled 10 seconds instead of leaving it to chance at a barbecue. This movement has quietly become one of the most talked about self-assessments in research on aging and independence, because unlike most fitness tests, it doesn't need a gym, a scale, or a stopwatch. It just needs the floor and your own body. What makes it so telling isn't the movement itself, it's everything the movement is quietly measuring at the same time. Let's break down exactly what this test is, why it matters more than people think, and what to do if you can't pass it yet. What the test actually measures. Getting up off the floor without support sounds simple, but it's really four different systems working together in the space of a few seconds. Your leg strength has to generate enough force to lift your entire body weight from the ground. Your hip mobility has to allow your legs to fold and unfold through a full range of motion. Your core has to stay braced and stable while your center of gravity shifts dramatically. And your balance has to hold steady through every phase of the movement, especially the transition from kneeling to standing. Most fitness tests isolate one of these things at a time. A grip test measures grip. A walk test measures cardiovascular endurance. This test measures all four at once, under real, unscripted conditions. That's exactly why it tends to catch things a treadmill or a scale might miss. There's also a coordination element that's easy to overlook. The movement requires your body to sequence these four systems in the right order at the right time without conscious thought. Leg drive has to kick in exactly when your hips unfold and your core braces, not a half second before or after. That sequencing, more than raw strength alone, is often what separates someone who moves through the test smoothly from someone who looks like they're solving a puzzle on the way up. Why doctors and researchers keep coming back to it. You don't need a lab to run this test, which is part of why it's shown up again and again in research on functional aging and independence. It's cheap, it's fast, and it correlates with something that matters far more than any single number on a lab report: whether a person can still live independently. Think about what independence actually requires day to day. Getting off a low couch, playing on the floor with a grandchild and getting back up afterward, recovering if you trip and end up on the ground, gardening, working under a sink, changing a tire. Almost none of these tasks show up on a standard checkup, but all of them depend on exactly the kind of full-body coordination this test measures. That's a big part of why this particular movement gets more attention than most gym-based strength tests. A 1-rep max on a leg press tells you what your muscles can do under ideal supported conditions, with a machine doing half the stabilizing work for you. The floor test strips all of that away. There's no machine to guide the movement, no seat to catch you, no handle to steady you. It's the closest thing to a real-world stress test that fits inside a living room. What it looks like when someone can't pass it. This is the part that surprises people. It's rarely one dramatic failure. It's a slow accumulation of small workarounds. A man starts using a hand on the ground just this once. Then it becomes a habit. Then he starts avoiding the floor altogether, skipping the low chair, letting someone else pick things up, taking the higher seat at every table without quite admitting why. None of that feels like decline in the moment. It feels like convenience. But each workaround is quietly training the body to need the workaround, and the muscles and coordination that used to make the floor easy get a little weaker every time they're not asked to do the job. It's a use it or lose it system, and the body is remarkably efficient about stripping away capabilities it isn't asked to use. There's no benefit to keeping a skill sharp that never gets called on. The tricky part is that this decline is almost invisible from the outside, and often from the inside too. A man can look perfectly healthy, hold a full-time job, mow his own lawn, and still have quietly lost the ability to get off the floor without support, simply because nothing in his week ever required it. That's exactly why a deliberate test matters. It surfaces something that everyday life has gotten very good at hiding. How to actually try it safely. If you haven't tried this yet, here's how to do it without risking a fall. Start near a wall or sturdy piece of furniture, not for support during the test itself, but as a safety net if you need it. Lower yourself down to sitting however feels natural. Kneeling first and then sitting back is usually the safest route down. Once you're seated, try to come back up using only your legs. Bring one foot flat on the floor, shift your weight forward over it, and press up to standing without your hands touching the ground. Give yourself a real, honest attempt rather than a half-hearted one. Some men subconsciously sandbag this the first time, moving cautiously because they expect to fail, which changes the outcome before they've even really tried. Approach it the way you would if nobody was watching and there was nothing to prove. That's when you get the most accurate read on where you actually stand. If you can do it cleanly on the first try, that's a strong sign. If you need to try a couple of times or you find yourself instinctively reaching for the ground, that's useful information too, not a diagnosis, just a starting point. A few common mistakes worth avoiding. Don't test this cold first thing after waking up or right after a heavy meal. Give yourself a few minutes to move around first so you're getting an honest read, not a stiff one. Don't rush the movement to try to beat the test. A slow, controlled rise that avoids the hands still counts, and it's actually the safer, more honest version of the test. And don't test on a hard floor with nothing soft nearby if balance is a real concern for you. A carpeted area or a yoga mat is a smarter starting point than tile. If you couldn't do it, here's exactly where to start. The good news is that this is one of the more trainable markers on the list, because it isn't really one skill. It's several smaller ones you can build separately and then put back together. Start by practicing the sit-down half of the movement on its own several times a week, focusing on control rather than speed. Add basic strength work for your legs, body weight squats to a chair, holding the chair if needed at first, gradually reducing how much you rely on it. Work on hip mobility with simple daily stretches, especially if kneeling feels tight or uncomfortable. And practice balance in isolation too. Something as simple as standing on one leg for 30 seconds near a counter builds real transferable stability. Here's a rough way to think about the progression over a month. In week 1, focus purely on the individual pieces, chair squats, hip stretches, single leg balance, without worrying about the full test at all. In week 2, start combining sitting down and standing back up, using one hand for support, paying attention to which part of the movement feels hardest. In week 3, try the same movement using just a fingertip or two for balance, rather than a full hand plant. By week 4, most men find they're ready to attempt the full test again, hands-free, and the difference from where they started is usually obvious immediately. Most men who commit to this notice a difference within a few weeks, not months, because the body responds quickly once it's given a clear, specific reason to do so. Quick pause. Where are you watching this from today? Drop your city in the comments below and let me know honestly how the test went. I read every one. What your result actually means and what it doesn't. One thing worth saying clearly, struggling with this test once doesn't mean something is seriously wrong. It means this particular combination of strength, mobility, and balance hasn't been asked to work together in a while, and it's asking to be trained again. This isn't a pass-fail verdict on your health as a whole. Plenty of men who eat well, sleep well, and feel generally fine still find this test humbling the first time they try it honestly, simply because modern life gives the body very few reasons to get up off the ground. What it does mean is that this is a useful checkpoint to come back to. Try it today, note honestly how it went, and try it again in a month after working on the pieces above. The floor doesn't care about excuses or explanations. It just tells you plainly where you actually stand. which is exactly why it's become one of the simplest, most trusted self-checks in this space. Try it, track it, come back to it. You don't need anyone's permission to run this test again next week or next month. Do it on your own terms in your own home and use it the way it's meant to be used, not as a verdict but as a starting line. Write the date down somewhere if it helps, a note on your phone, a mark on a calendar, so a month from now you're comparing against something concrete instead of relying on memory. If this was useful, subscribe. We're building out a full series of tests like this one, each targeting a different piece of how well you're actually aging, not just how you feel on any given day. The floor test is the first marker. There are several more worth checking, and most men have never been shown any of them.